Eric,
Now we're cooking with gas.
how's that?
It's really good.
Oh, good.
Thank you for your patience.
No worries.
It's yeah, this is great. Now I can see you
Awesome.
perfectly. You sound great.
Awesome.
It's a new thing trying it like this, so I appreciate you doing this.
No problem.
Yeah.
Everything look okay in the frame? Anything I should move? You can't see my IKEA boxes
No,
that's
I don't.
strewn
And you
about
know
this
what? I'm only
studio.
going to use little things if I use anything.
Okay, great.
Is there a light on in your? Could you put a little
Yeah.
bit more light
Yeah,
on
I can cut
you?
the overhead. Oh no, that is on. That's as bright as it goes.
That's okay. That's
Right.
okay. Yeah, it sounds great though. It's really good. This will
I
work
could open the
perfect.
curtain. Maybe let me try that. Hold on. Is that a little bit
Yeah,
better or too
that's
much
actually really good.
brightness?
It's quite dramatic, in fact.
Okay.
Quite a nice light.
All right.
So, how are you?
I'm great. I'm really great. I'm sorry I forgot about this morning. I usually write stuff in my calendar immediately because I do have a tendency to do that, and I totally didn't. I must have thought, oh, I'll never forget that. I don't have anything going on. And then of course the
It's all
calendar
good.
fills up, and you're like, what the hell? Oh my God.
It's all good. No, it's great. I'm glad. I mean, this is what happens. It's the new
Yeah, yeah.
reality.
Oh my God.
It's the
It's
new reality. There's a lot. Strangely, it's such a funny time, eh? Because it's like, in some ways, there's nothing going on,
yeah.
but there's a lot of distractions.
There are a lot of distractions, and I think we as musicians make ourselves busy with stuff. Like we create projects and fill our
Yeah.
time up and collaborate with other people even remotely, and so it's felt like a really busy time. The first couple of months of the pandemic were really slow, and I think I needed that, but it's really filled up, which is
Yeah.
great.
How did those first months look for you? Like, what was,
Yeah, brutal.
let's say, mid March? Was it a real
Yeah, I mean,
brutal
I
shift?
lost a bunch of dates throughout Canada, and then a huge European tour, and then a second European tour, and then I was supposed to go to the States and record in June, and that all got canceled, and so it was. I think the first couple of months were like heartbreak over that, and then I don't know if you experienced this, but rescheduling a bunch of things and then canceling them a second time, and then rescheduling them again, and at a certain point, like after a couple of months, I'm like, I can't control any of this. I'm just gonna have to wait it out
Yeah.
and find other things to do, which I did, and that's been great. Yeah,
It's amazing that you turned it around that quick. What was the maybe we'll
yeah,
go back to March a little bit, talk about
yeah,
the despair. was there
yeah.
was there moments of despair? Was it kind of like holy
Sure.
smokes?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the first couple of months of the year were really awesome. I went to the States for January and February and spent a month in New York and then a month in Nashville. And then kind of in the center was in New Orleans. And I'm fairly certain I had COVID while I was in New Orleans at the end of January. I've been never sicker in my life. So I went to Folk Alliance
I
and
remember. I was there.
oh, it was
I
brutal. I mean, I had
remember.
a
That's right.
fever for
I didn't see
days.
you, right? You said you were super super sick.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, I never had a cough like that. Like I had to lean over the side of the bed. Like it was brutal,
And
really
so
brutal.
wow. And of course at the time
Yeah,
no one was even talking about
no,
COVID. So
no, exactly.
and
But I
it
had been to
checks
New
out with
York,
the symptoms and stuff. Like when you think about it now, it's like,
all of the symptoms. Yeah,
whoa.
I had every single one. So I could have been patient zero in New Orleans. I don't know.
That's pretty wild. And so,
Yeah.
what about January, February? What were you up to there? You were in New York. What were you doing then?
Yeah, I was in New York, kind of doing a mix mentorship, mix
Yeah.
engineering mentorship down there. So I was in a bunch of studios and kind of hanging out with some friends that I knew from the States who were working in that field and kind of being in their spaces and asking them questions and learning basically. And then the same in Nashville and went up to Memphis and did a tour of all the studios there, which is amazing. And then kind of made this plan to go and record down in Memphis in June. Memphis in June. It sort of felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. A little warm, but very
Li-
cool. Who are
yeah,
you going
yeah.
to work with?
I was gonna go and record at Royal with Boo
Oh,
Mitchell.
wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And
So,
then a
you
friend
had a
of mine.
chance. You went down and had visited the studio and had it all lined up, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, and
Whoa.
yeah, a bunch of the studios down there actually to kind of see which ones would work. And I was in the very beginning of the kind of plan of it, and so nothing was officially on the books. I mean, I had a kind of a tentative block, but I had to basically lose that
And so,
and
for
start
the
from scratch.
people, for everyone else, Boo Mitchell is the son of, or Grant's the son of Willie
Son,
Mitchell.
Yeah, that's right.
who
Yeah.
produced all the Al Green and
Yeah. Yeah.
tons of other stuff. Great, great,
Yeah.
great recordings. I mean,
Incredible
legendary
players.
recordings. It's such a cool,
Yeah.
and they've kept the studio pretty similar, have they not?
It's identical.
That's what
It's
I
nothing has
heard.
moved. Boo is like those are where the drums have always been. That's Al's mic over there. Yeah, the little kind of percussion machine at the beginning of "I Can't Stand the Rain." He's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, this is what it sounds like. Here it is." It was kind of amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, that's such
yeah,
a cool thing.
yeah,
Those are
yeah.
amazing recordings. I
Oh,
love listening to them because of the similarities between all of that high
yeah,
record stuff.
yeah.
It's
It's
all kind of
amazing.
like identical. The singer changes,
Yeah, yeah,
but the band sounds exactly the same. What a
totally.
cool. But
Well,
you've
and I was going to potentially record with some of those guys as
okay.
well, with
Wow.
like the Hodges brothers and
Yeah.
a few other guys down there. And yeah, it was an exciting kind of possibility. And so that was heartbreaking as well. In addition to all the gigs lost, this kind of exciting creative opportunity was kind of heartbreaking as well. But we move on and find other projects, and that'll happen in the future if it's meant to happen. So,
And
um,
has the connection been maintained at all
oh
or
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely,
cool.
absolutely,
I
yeah,
mean, it's been an interesting thing to watch has been the kind of creative I feel like it's been really fun to watch your career over the last number of years, and you have been on this real sweet trip over the last little while, not
yeah,
only as a songwriter and a singer, but getting into the production, taking the reins not
right,
only of your own records, but
yeah,
other people's records,
that's right,
which I
yeah.
think is a real natural fit for your skill set and everything else.
Thanks.
How has that felt?
Well, that's kind of what I've devoted most of the last 6 or 7 months to is other people's stuff. I mean, I think that when I lost that opportunity to go and record, um, I got a little deflated creatively myself, and just these kind of opportunities to produce remotely started coming up, and I was able to kind of fill my time with these, kind of helping other people realize their vision, and that was really buoying. Like it was exciting to be able to do, and that's really what I've done. Worked with a bunch of other artists
Really?
during this time.
What
Yeah,
an amazing thing to develop
yeah. I
during.
mean, I've always been wanting to kind of balance my touring and music career with producing of other people, but I mean, you know how it is. You take the opportunities when they come. So there was a lot of opportunity off the last record that I released. And so I've been on tour for basically for 2.5 years straight. Like, not, I would be home for 10 days and then gone again. So, in a way, this pandemic has allowed me to kind of put some more energy into the production side of things that I've wanted to kind of build up. And when it comes time to tour a new record again, I'm sure that will take over like it always does. But right now, it's really great to kind of foster that creative side.
How do you feel about the possibility of hitting the road again and getting back into the grind? I mean, I find this is a really interesting time for a lot of musicians, is because we've now had this little break.
Yeah,
I've been in the same boat, right? Is that I was
yeah,
so used to touring all the time that no
yep,
other avenues of my career
right,
really had enough. I didn't have time to develop
right,
that way. So even just like technical skills on the
sure,
computer or, recording skills, all those things. And I'm starting to find real value in
yeah,
having had time, just like you're
yep,
saying.
yeah,
How does it feel, the idea that, because once it starts ramping up again,
yeah.
how do you feel like your reapproach will be?
I feel scared about it. I mean, I think I've really dedicated a lot of time to my mental and physical health in the last 6 or 7 months, which you can really lose when you're on the road. Like, I mean, it becomes like you're a hamster on a wheel, and sometimes the opportunities that come along, you don't want to miss something, so you take everything, and you're less discerning. I mean, I am, and so I've found that having this kind of moment of pause has allowed me to really evaluate, well, what are the kind of shows I want to be doing? What are the kind of things that I want to do to kind of help, build my career, but also maintain my mental and physical health during
Yeah.
that process? And so I think I'll be a little more discerning. I might not do like a 30-date tour
Right.
where 10 of those dates are like bust dates anyway. You're just kind of filling a date on a calendar. And so much of this business is optics, like going and playing all of these shows. They don't always necessarily translate into really good things for your career, but people perceive it. The busier you are, the kind of more in demand you become. And I think I want to get off that hamster wheel if I can, and just pick the good ones. you know?
I think I mean, that is such a astute observation because everybody's kind of thinking about that now, right?
Oh man.
I really I remember when when this happened in March, I was in the middle of a tour, a bunch of stuff was canceled, and I kind of went through this feeling. And then there was this moment where I kind of went, it was this strange feeling of relief. I felt
Yeah.
guilty about it, but I felt relief
Mhm.
because all of a sudden I wasn't pressed. I wasn't faced with the question of saying yes or no, or actually
Yes.
just saying yes because I
Yeah.
always said yes, basically.
Yep.
Even though for years, and I got two young kids, I was saying to myself, okay, time to pull back. And I was trying, and but I wasn't, I still was going out and doing and going and going and going. And then I kind of said to myself, okay, I got this little bit of a reprieve. And there was this weird sense of relief. And then I read this Roseanne Cash article. Did you read that
Oh, I
Roseanne
read
Cash
it. It's
article?
so good.
And
And it made me cry.
me too. I felt like I felt like I was alone. Like all of
Yeah.
these conversations, I swear this is why I
Yeah.
like to do this, is
Yeah.
because it's made me feel less alone in my own creative pursuits and
Yeah.
maintaining a career. But I read that article and I was like, oh my gosh, this is how everybody feels. It felt like when she explains that, it felt like the business was about to boil over. It was at a point
Yeah.
where we were all saying yes to everything. Everything
Yeah.
was about optics. Everything was, well, you
Yeah.
gotta say yes. You gotta do
Yeah.
this. You gotta do this. And what it was creating an unsustainable
Yeah.
model for the artists themselves. Everybody was burning out or were
I know.
unwell or you know and it's interesting now to have a gap and go, okay, well, wait, what happens if you reinvest some of that I don't find that many people I know in the creative pursuits are wasting their time.
None. Nobody that I talk to is wasting their time. They're they're being creative in some way. The value system is has got to change. And I think that the definition of success kind of has to change for us too, where it becomes we're monetizing this thing. And if the monetization isn't at a certain level, then we deem ourselves unsuccessful. And I think that that has to change, where there is more value placed on um, the process of creating, which is work.
Yeah.
It's we're doing stuff, you
Well,
know.
I'm not totally convinced that it actually won't pay off.
I agree. I totally
It's
agree.
actually more the model that's kind of like I kind of think it's almost like the industry thinking as everybody
Yeah,
needs to be out all the time. But what happens
yeah,
is no one has time to actually create. And the goal, the thing
yeah,
that you're trying to do, which is get
yeah.
better at writing songs, get better at playing music,
Yes.
goes to the or be healthy and have enough
Yeah.
vitality to want to hit the stage every
Oh my God.
when you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
It's a real interesting kind of conundrum.
Well, when I did kind of my financial breakdown, I mean, I think you get on this treadmill of expectation of touring, and when I pulled back, the the money that I had increased so much by not being on the road. Like it was so expensive for me to be touring, and you're taking these opportunities and trying to advance in other markets, and those are financial losses, and you're buoying them with some grant money and all that kind of stuff. But the anxiety that creates of financial kind of walking this kind of thin line financially all the time. And when I removed all of that, I'm like, wait a second, my financial model is kind of okay if I tour a little bit less and invest a little bit more money in developing the production side of things, which I can be home, which doesn't cost me money to be working. And if I can balance those two things a little bit better, I'll be better off financially. The thing that it doesn't do is it doesn't reinvest money in other parts of the industry, which as artists we're constantly doing. We're paying a publicist, a radio tracker, we're paying a social media person, we're paying all of these other people to have careers in addition to ours. So we're supporting a whole industry, and the requirement of artists to do that is killing us basically.
That's so it's so interesting because I mean I guess that is inherently where the model comes from,
Yeah,
right? That where we talk about how it's happened.
yeah,
Well, it's pressure from the idea that there's a whole back of people that rely on
yes,
that work, and they're good
yeah.
people. They're
I love
great
the people
people.
that I work with, and I want them to have successful careers too,
Exactly. It feels
but it
good to
can't
pay
be
the
at my
people we work with.
expense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really interesting to to start to feel like in control a little bit more. That's what this has kind of given me. A little bit more feeling of like I can be the at the helm of my own ship, and decide the path that I'm taking. There's no right way to do this. If there was, then everyone would be super successful and be living in mansions and be financially kind of no worries at all. But there isn't one right way to do it. You kind of have to define what is success for yourself and constantly be reevaluating that.
It's such a big evaluation. I mean, I find
Oh
it
my
so
God.
interesting. As I get older, it changes so much, and
Totally.
I have a better sense of what it means to me personally, and it
Yep.
looks very different than it was when I was 20.
Totally.
It's a
Yeah.
different calculation now. I mean, that was part of me moving back to Fredericton, was that
Yeah.
this was part of what I deemed the good life for me. I wanted to be close to my mom, and I wanted to be in New Brunswick. I wanted to be
Yeah.
home, and it was a good place for my kids. And I just thought, okay, this is so it was has felt like a really big move, a positive move because of all
Yeah.
of those things, you know. But 10 years ago, it seemed like an impossibility. I couldn't
Yeah.
possibly do it because of the fact I needed to be near an international airport and I needed to be closer to the industry. And
Right.
I think what's interesting and kind of scary is this idea of like, I want to know that I have the strength when it all comes back
Yeah.
and when all those pressures come back and
Yeah.
when tours come back. And I don't want to be ungrateful because I'm grateful when tours come around. I'm grateful when
Yep.
opportunities come around. But do I have the strength to maintain that balance that we're talking about? Take those gigs that make sense for us, and can we
Yeah.
maintain a good career, or is this just allowed us to do this, and then once it all cooks up again and it becomes this thing where, okay, well,
Yeah.
they're out and you're not out or whatever.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, right? There's this whole like perception, not only perception from the fan perspective, but from to one another. It's like, well, they're going out. For years
Yeah.
I said to myself, well, why do I feel like, why am I just getting sick, and
Yeah.
why is this so hard, lonely feeling?
Yeah.
When they're out all the time, they look like they're crushing it. And then I
They
found
feel
out,
lonely too.
yeah,
Absolutely. Like, I think that if we can break down this kind of this image of like like you said, I don't want to be ungrateful. The thing that we get to do is incredible, and the joy that it brings. Like, if I could just like shoot myself out of the sky onto a stage and play for a bunch of people every night without having the travel and without having the financial anxiety and without having to coordinate all of the logistics and without all of that kind of stress, man, would that be amazing. Like, I think Amelia Curran wrote this great article a few years ago, and she basically said that the performance is the reward for all of the
yeah,
work. And it is. It's like people think that you're on the stage and that's your job, but the job is like that is like one little sliver of the job.
it's the grind. It's the,
It
and
is.
again, everybody's got hard jobs. I'm not, and that's
Sure.
the other thing. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining because I understand
Right.
that like jobs are hard. Work
Yeah.
is hard. And
Yeah.
I'm ready to work. I'm ready to work. I don't
Yeah.
want to be a person who complains about working and having a job, and that there
Yeah.
is a grind. There's a grind portion to everybody's gig.
Totally. Yeah.
But
Totally.
it becomes unsustainable at a certain point,
Yeah.
and some people can sustain a lot more, and other
Yep.
people, but I got
But they're
quite
doing it
sick.
and they're sacrificing other aspects of their life, whether it be their physical or mental health or family or, like there are things that you sacrifice in order to do this job. And I
Yeah,
think that this period has been a really nice reevaluating of balance, and how do we maintain that balance? And I think as artists going into this next phase, we're going to be the ones that dictate how it goes. And if we can be strong enough to, um, maintain that balance for ourselves, the industry has to follow.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
well, I guess if everybody kind of, I mean, really, it is. It's about us, and I think it's kind of about us as individuals as well, because it
sure.
requires that individual. It requires no one's going to say it on my behalf.
Yeah,
No
that's
one's
right.
going to say no on my behalf. It's all based on everybody wants everybody to say yes all the time, which is
Yeah, right.
fine. That's how the industry works. So it really is up to the person. And sometimes you should say yes, and other times, but yeah, I got sick. I ran. My limit was that I got, you know, ill, as you said.
Yeah,
Like in January when you got sick, I got sick. I was on the road and I didn't know what was going on, and I was super unwell, super depressed. I've always been a kind of upbeat, happy guy, and all of a sudden I just like tanked.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
tanked, and
No,
I
I get
went,
it.
what is this? Wait, I'm healthy. Like I love this. Why is this happening to me, right? Like,
Yeah,
and then I
yeah,
just kind of pulling back, I realized, well, wait, like that was a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a sustained effort, as you said, financial anxiety, where you're just pulling it off, even though it looks really good. The interesting thing I've found is that it's right across the board. Eh? You
Yeah.
talk to people
Yeah.
who have way I talk to people who have way bigger careers than
Yeah.
than me, and
This never ends. This never ends. No matter, like, you feel like, oh, if I just get to that next stage, then things are going to be easier. But there's always a push. It's constant.
and
So
you scale up.
yeah,
You
and
s-
you have more money, more problems. You know?
well, yeah, I mean, you do. You scale up. You get more techs. You get more, like, you know what I mean. Like, you get more staff. You get more. It's a bigger thing. There's more markets
Yeah.
to tour in.
Yeah.
I think that is an really interesting part of the conversation. Is this realization as you get older that that is what it is. It doesn't. It's not, and it's not a bad thing. Again, it's about making
Yeah.
it work for you, but that it's not going to just switch one day. There's not going to be a switch where
Totally.
you have a song or you meet the right person and all of a sudden
Right.
it's like it's go time and everything's
Right.
easy.
Right. Yeah. That never goes away. So I mean, I think you have to be comfortable with a certain amount of that kind of stress if you want to be in this business. And I think that we all understand that. I think that, and any entrepreneur really does. Like, if you're, you know, if you're a startup of any kind, you're kind of having that element of risk constantly, and um, that I kind of understand, but it's being able to kind of assess how far you can push yourself before things start to crack, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Well, before you start killing the golden goose.
Exactly.
That's, you know what I
Exactly.
mean. The thing that's supposed
Yeah.
to lay the eggs, it just
Yeah.
doesn't work anymore because
No.
that's the thing, right? Is that
Yeah.
if you can be working and working and working, but if you're not pulling back and restoring, this is the main purpose of these conversations, is the restorative conversations. How do
Yes.
artists restore? How do you
Yeah.
sustain creative spirit, right?
Yeah.
Because that is trickier.
Yes.
That's trickier. That's the thing that wanes. At
Yeah.
court, you can be out all the time, but if you're not feeling like you want to be on stage, or if you're not feeling like I want to write a song, then the
Yep.
whole thing doesn't. Then it just shuts down.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, all the other parts of the business infiltrate, right? So even if you come home from a tour and you've got 3 weeks off, there's so many things that are filling it, whether it be, the back end of the tour that you just completed, finishing up the details of that, or working on elements of the next tour, excuse me. That whole 3 week period where you thought, oh, I get to just kind of sit and relax, and maybe I'll write a few tunes and I'll watch a couple great movies and I'll get to hang with my family and my dogs and kind of fill back up. That whole time, I was finding that whole time was being filled. And
Right.
I'm already at the airport. I'm like, what happened to those 3 weeks that were supposed to be so great? And so for me, it was almost 3 years of that,
Interesting.
that
Yeah.
it just was, I was done by the end. I mean, through that period, I gained 40 pounds. I mean, I'm I've lost it since I've been home. Like, just removing that stress, being able to make my own meals, kind of prioritize things, not having the constant kind of dialogue in my head of you've got to get this done and do that, like the list, the task list.
Right.
Eliminating that was just so good for me physically.
And so, what else have you done to kind of what have become habits that you haven't been able to have on the road that have made you feel better?
Honestly, waking up at the same time every morning, like waking up early every morning, making a coffee, sitting with my husband, having a chat. Like, we do that every single morning now. I walk the dog and then I start my day. So my day doesn't start till 10 a.m., where, normally I would be like coming off of a late night show. I mean, late night for me is like I'm home at midnight, as
Yeah,
opposed to like in bed at 9:30, you know?
I hear you.
But
Oh, I hear you.
oh my God, nothing better than an early show. I love it. But I'd get home late at night, and then I'd be up at 6:30 in the morning on my computer doing tasks for the next day. So it was like there was no moment of just, oh, the breathing out in the morning of like, okay, now what do I have to do? Like, this kind of calm morning routine that has changed everything, where I get to kind of assess what it is I'm going to do with my day and be a little bit more selective. And I feel so lucky to be able to do that. There's so many people that still don't.
And do you feel like you're more effective because of it?
So much more productive, so much more creative. I did a bunch of co-writing with a bunch of people over this time through Zoom and in person, but That's been really great. But honestly, I really haven't found my mojo of personal creativity where I'm writing for myself. I
Right.
haven't found that yet, and I'm waiting for that to come back. And I think maybe I'm a little scared to even dive into it because I know it's going to mean an album and I know it's going to mean a tour again, and I'm kind of gun shy about it at the
Interesting.
moment. You
I
know?
also wonder sometimes. I mean, one thing about I had written, I made a record, I made this instrumental record, but it was quite
Right.
different from anything. It was about experimentation. It was really liberating, and I started right away, and it was this really fun project, that something I always wanted to do. But I hadn't written many songs with words that I would then, you know what I mean, perform in the
Right.
traditional sense of how I perform. And then I did a
So
couple shows when things opened up a little bit, and all of a sudden I kind of got that desire
I know.
to write. I feel like sometimes it's a bit of like the song informs the show and the show
Yep.
informs, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And
It
so
feeds each
maybe it's
other.
just a matter of shows starting, and then all of a sudden the songs, you kind of want to fill that. Okay, well, what does the show need? That's how I
Yep.
always think, it's like, oh, what do I need? I need something that feels like this. Okay, then I start accessing that part of my musical world.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's great. For me, every album feels like it's got to be some sort of challenge in some way. Like I don't, and I never have really been, oh, I have to, it's time for me to make a new album, so I've got to get it out, you know? I've never felt like I've had a career where I just wanted to have albums every 2 years just to have them. So I've got to have some reason to make it. And I've got kind of a concept for an album, a new album, and we'll see if it pans
But the
out.
reason hasn't totally
It's
solidified
not
just yet.
formed yet,
Interesting.
or it's formed, but I have to feel like I need that one first spark, and when the spark goes, then the fire starts and I can finish the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Oh,
You know?
absolutely. And so for you, when that spark happens, when the fire starts,
Yeah,
are you basically, all in,
guns
no
blazes.
distractions? That's
Yeah,
yeah.
guns blazes to the end.
And is
Definitely.
that a good time for you?
It's stressful, but it's my most favorite time. Like my favorite thing is creating and producing and making records and being in the studio. And touring is like second to that. I like performing and I love being on the stage, but the desire to perform is not stronger than the desire to create. And it's always been like that
Yeah.
for me. Whereas Clive, my husband, he is much more on interested in performing. Like he gets a buzz out of being on stage and loves playing with the band and loves playing with musicians. And I do too, but that is his primary love,
Okay.
you know? And I think that people are different in that way, you know? The creative side has always been the spark for me. And sometimes I'll even create a spark, like I'll create a moment of anxiety for myself, like create a problem that I have to solve. And then that kind of process is makes it exciting
Well, on purpose.
on purpose. Like the last album, I knew I wanted to make an album differently, and I wanted to do it in a way that was like challenging me personally as a musician and as a producer. And so I went in and made this record remotely, not in a regular studio. We built a studio from scratch, and I wanted to finish a whole record in like a week, basically, and work with musicians that I hadn't worked with before, which is also huge anxiety, and
Right,
then make a
right. First,
documentary.
like, yeah, yeah, and add a documentary element to
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
And so
So
this was first
creating these
time in the
tensions.
studio was when you started playing. Like you didn't
Yeah,
know the wow, wow.
no, no. I played with Anna once before. We did one gig in Toronto, and I liked her playing a lot. But I never played with Glenn Melcham, drummer. Clive had played a bunch with him. He was in Glenn's band, the Swallows, and so they had played together. And I had heard his playing and knew that he would be a great player with a songwriter. He's a good listener, and I mean, he plays with two of the greatest songwriters in Canada. And
Yeah.
so,
He's in Blue
playing,
Rodeo and has been
he's
for years.
right, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. And so he's really great at like understanding what a song needs and can put kind of ego aside to be able to kind of support that song. And then Leaf, I had produced Leaf with other people, but we had never played together.
Okay.
So that was kind of the core band, and that tension of not really knowing each other, none of us really having played together before as a unit. There was a little magic in that
Well,
tension, but man, it was stressful.
I that's cool though because it makes you it puts you on your toes.
Totally.
That's what you
Yeah.
want, right? That's what I
Yeah.
think, that's where that magic comes from, is it makes you listen.
Totally.
You got to be, but there's trust. You
Yeah.
invited the people into the room because they're great, just like all the great studios in the
Yes.
world. A lot of the times it was just like, okay, let's go in, because
Yep.
everybody's at that level where they're listening. Whenever I've had the opportunity to play with people at that extremely high level,
Yeah.
that's been the excitement of it, is that they're right on the edge of the moment,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they have abilities, their technical abilities is high enough to adjust on the
Yeah.
fly. It's a
Yeah.
remarkable thing to be part of.
Well, and I went into that recording process without material done. Like I
Okay.
had two songs completely written and the rest were like sketches. So we would like rehearse in the morning. I would like write lyrics all night long and then we would wake up the next morning and then record the thing that I just finished. So it was a total kind of
Whoa.
the anxiety of not even having the material quite finished. Or I'm writing the songs with the arrangement in mind, like that's happening all together. So I think the project that I want to write now is I really want to write songs without a production in mind and see if I can get the songs better and better and better because of that they're not dependent on the production. I don't think that the songs necessarily are. There's a couple that are difficult to play without the band because of the parts that were written and created. But I really want to feel like I could have songs like Hoagie Carmichael that are so strong can be played by anybody with anyone,
Yeah. Oh
or
yeah.
countless songwriters.
But and that's really challenging because you can't hide
Yeah,
anything. There's nothing to hide. All the
exactly.
flaws, like I always find that in a song, you have those moments where you can kind of like not cheat it, but production can fake it, right? Big
Yeah,
moments. Oh, let's just add something, a musical moment that will kind
that's
of
right.
like,
Let's fill this gap
let's
with
fill this
this.
gap with a musical
Yeah,
moment by, or having have draw people's attention away. Well, as you say, you listen to a perfect song and it flows so naturally that there isn't
exactly.
that. It
Yeah,
isn't a matter of production tricks. Production
yeah,
helps. It's super important.
exactly. 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 I mean, the album that I made, the last album, was so much a, a kind of a celebration of musicians and the musicians that I was playing with in particular. I tried to give them their space and show them off, and so the songs were kind of written to be able to kind of exalt those musical moments. And so because I'm solitary now, and the ability to kind of play with those musicians is removed because they're in Toronto and I'm here, and I guess I'm trying to figure out a way to write songs in a solitary way, and maybe make a solo piano record
Oh
or
wow.
make a solo piano record that could also have band moments of those songs. I don't know. It's kind of forming as
Do you
I
find
think
that
about it.
your work now as a producer with other people is informing how you produce yourself?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, strengthening the song. Like it's funny how you can kind of um, you can look at something and immediately see the things that need to be tightened up, when it's not your own. But when you're so close to it, I mean, I've seen the value of having a producer by being a producer. And so the desire to have someone produce me is getting stronger and stronger, but finding the right person is such a
It's a
trick.
real trick. I mean,
Yeah.
I've worked with different producers almost every record I've made,
Yeah.
because I love that relationship. I also
Yeah.
feel like I kind of need it to a certain,
Yeah.
because of that exact same. I trust the same thing. I kind of love the outside perspective of being like, you can do that better. Don't be
Yeah.
lazy. Don't be
Yeah.
lazy. I like that little
Yeah.
thing being like, you can do better with the second verse, or you can make more of the bridge, or
Right.
you know what I mean, or it needs another part. You're
Right.
just trying to get the song done.
Yeah.
That's kind of the instinct. I think that it's so
Yeah.
helpful sometimes to just have that voice, but it has to be a voice that you trust.
That you trust.
So
Absolutely. And I think because my mind has been for so long, like as an arranger, like basically that's kind of how I started, was writing, orchestral music, thinking about things in terms of their arrangement. And so much of my songwriting process is linked to this idea of orchestration, that the idea of someone coming in and producing it has felt really scary because so much of the identity of that song in my mind is based on the thing that I've conceptualized as the orchestration.
right.
So that's how I want to push myself on this next record, is to strip away, constantly be challenging myself to strip away this idea of orchestration and just distill it down to the song.
The core.
Um, and then I'll be more open to someone producing it.
Right. I find it interesting because I think the job of producers changed a lot, so
Yeah,
much. You know what I mean? I think that,
yeah,
and I don't mean to say that there's actually a unique job of producer, because I think actually still today there's producers who don't touch any knobs
yeah,
and don't do anything, and their job is just songs. You know what I mean?
yeah,
In country music, it was like, well, producers like selected songs for the
yeah,
singer. There
yeah.
was
That's
a,
right.
it probably still is like that. You know, it's a
Yeah,
lot about like song finding, the appropriate song for the great singer, match it up with
yeah,
the great band, and magic. You know, I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
And then there's, you know, other Jerry Wexlers, you know what I mean, who are just these amazing listeners,
Yes.
amazing and with great taste.
Yeah.
But it's not like, I don't think he was at the board. He wasn't like also
Sure.
engineering the record, also orchestrating the record, also like there was a real division of labor.
Yeah. That's my preference when I'm producing, is to have someone engineering so that I can sit back and be thinking about the musical moments.
Yeah.
But during this pandemic, sorry, my dog is barking.
Oh, that's okay.
Lily, be quiet.
Yeah, how is your dog a listener?
Yeah, yeah, listens too well.
Yeah.
Anyone walks by and she's
Yeah.
barking. Clive, can you get the door? I think someone's at the door.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Sorry, you can edit this out.
That's an easy edit. It happens. It happens.
I don't think there's anyone even there. She's just barking. The wind blew.
If you need
And
to get up, you can get up too. That's okay.
Clive's gone to see what it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Nobody's there. Anyway, so what we were saying, oh yeah, that's the kind of producer I want to be, is the one that sits in the room while someone else is engineering, and I can kind of oversee the musical moments and talk to musicians. That's my favorite kind of producing.
Yeah.
Thinking about arrangement, not thinking about the technical aspect of things. Although I have conversations with engineers of, let's try a different mic, or let's try this particular technique of miking the drums instead, or we have conversations about sound, and I work with the engineer to kind of get the sound that's in my mind and the artist's mind, right? But through this pandemic, I've had to be the engineer a lot of the times, and I've had to create a lot of the parts myself, or have,
Oh, I see.
farm out. So I've ended up having to kind of step up in terms of technology. I don't mind doing it, but it's not my favorite.
I feel like a lot of people, that's what it is now, especially as you're
Yeah,
getting established. You know what I mean? It's a
yeah,
luxury. Sure, Rick Rubin can not touch
yeah,
any buttons, but
right.
everybody else I know, you know, most people who are producers do know a lot about engineering. They know a lot
You
about
have
EQ.
to.
They know a lot about everything, you know.
Well,
And
how could an artist afford to pay for a studio and a producer separately?
well,
I
and in
mean, a
fact,
lot of
you're playing the music
yeah,
as well, right? So there's,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
So it becomes more cost effective to do it that way. I don't mind doing it that way, but I do find there's a bit more magic when you're dealing with a bunch of personalities, different
How do
musicians.
you find that, like as a producer? We were just talking about the importance of trust.
Yeah.
You know, when you're
Yeah.
talking to artists and they're starting to share their songs,
Uh-huh.
and it's funny because you can be the most confident songwriter in the world, but sharing a song the first time
Yeah.
is I think for me it's terrifying, and you're
Yeah.
vulnerable. You're so vulnerable at that moment.
Absolutely.
How do you establish that relationship of trust with an artist?
What I've started to do, I mean, and it's I'm trying to get better and better at it. I mean, that's I would say 90% of it is building that relationship and that trust, and understanding what it is that the artist really wants from the music. Because sometimes as artists, we're not even able to articulate it. It's this kind of nebulous thing. And so I do a lot of pre-production kind of conversations and listening, and I'll ask for big playlists of stuff that they really love. I'll send them stuff and get their honest reaction to it. Like, tell me all the things you love about this and all the things you hate. And then through that, kind of get to know them. And as I'm asking more questions of them, I think it builds that trust. So they're able to say, no, I don't like that, or this is really what I want. So we do that even before uh, song sharing. So that element of trust is kind of developed. And then when that happens, then they share songs, and I always start with a good comment every single time.
Right.
So I love this part about this song. What if you tried to do this here, or move that section there? Or what if we tighten up this line? This verse is so amazing, but this line feels a little lazier. What if we tighten that up? Like those are kind of conversations that have to happen after the trust is built, or you can really deflate someone
Well, I think there needs to be an interest, a feeling like that you like them fundamentally as artists, that you're
Yes.
just trying to
Yeah.
make it better, but it's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just trying to make it better, but it's interesting the idea of like establishing some goal, or like not goals, but an endpoint artistically
It's like a
that
palette
you
that
can
you're
share,
trying
that
to
you can kind of
understand.
go,
Yeah.
okay, I get a sense of what you really want from this. I feel like as I've done more records and I've worked with different producers, that seems to be a real common thread of the great producers, is this idea of being able to go, okay, establishing intent and establishing where you want
Yes.
to go with this, and then at
Yeah.
least you feel like you're working together towards that end point.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there are many producers out there that have a particular sound and they would be hired to kind of massage whatever it is into that sound that they have. That's never been my interest as a producer. I'm way more interested in diversity and change and having different sounds and working with different kinds of artists and different kinds of music and different genres for me as growth for myself, you know? And so I've never had like a personal I don't have a personal attachment to uh, vibe or
Yep.
genre or sound,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah. And some
Yeah.
of my favorite producers very much have a vibe.
Yeah, mine too.
I
Mine
love
too.
Daniel Lanois. I love him. Absolutely
Absolutely.
think
Me
he's a
too.
total genius. I love the way his records sound. And I love it when artists like Willie or Bob Dylan or
Yeah.
Emmylou Harris say, okay, I want to make a record with Daniel Lanois. And you're like, oh, I'm so
I know what
excited to
that's going to sound
see what
like.
this is going to be
Yeah.
like, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I think that that is, I mean, I think that it's my personality as a songwriter too. Like I can't commit to one thing. I get bored. I just get too bored. It would be if I made the same kind of style record over and over and over again. I'd be so bored. Now, some people might listen to my records and go, "You have a sound. What are you talking about?" And they're probably right that I'm making choices as an artist that are in line with my vision. But I do think that the artists that I'm producing all sound very different, you know,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
try and kind of bring out their personality in their music.
Yeah. And do you find that you have a formal music education?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of, that's it's not different from everybody, but it's from,
Yeah.
in the Atlantic Canadian music scene, let's say, that is quite
Yeah.
different. Especially as
Yeah.
formal as you have. You did your masters
Yeah.
in what
Yeah.
was it, in arrangement
Composition.
and
Yeah.
composition?
But it was a focus kind of on electronic music, and multimedia. And I took a bunch of courses in, you know, traditional composition and arranging, you know, like orchestration and writing for orchestra and classical chamber music groups. But the focus was a lot more on performance art and creativity and electronic music and electroacoustic music and sound art and stuff like that. So I had a really good knowledge of editing.
Oh,
You know, I
okay.
could work in Pro Tools pretty fluidly because of that work. And thankfully, Pro Tools has not changed that much. There are many other programs that I used while I was there that are completely obsolete, or they look completely different now, and I don't even know how to use them. Like, I feel like a bit of a rube with technology. If it's differs or strays from the way I know to use it, then I get so
But you
frustrated.
do
You know?
have you do have a way in.
Yeah, I do. I
Yeah.
do. Yeah,
Interesting. And do
yeah.
you find that you've had to unlearn some of the things you learned in school?
I think that the biggest thing that I learned as a kind of classically trained musician is this idea of playing something right, and the kind of practice style of playing your part correctly, you know. And I think that giving that up, like I did an undergraduate in jazz piano, and that was a real challenge for me in terms of improvisation and listening to other people and altering the thing that you're doing based on the thing that they're doing. So this musical conversation during those 4 years was a real challenge because of the classical piano studies that I had done.
That was your
um,
upbringing, Royal
that was my
Conservatory.
upbringing. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so the more I kind of work with people who are not trained musicians, I think that I've had to amend the way in which I dialogue with other musicians to be able to kind of speak the language. I mean, that's 100% what your role is as a producer, is being able to converse with people in their own language. And if you can't do that, then there builds this anxiety or resentment. People want to create something that feels magical, and they want to give you the thing that you want to hear. But If you become too rigid in it, then it takes the person out of it completely. If you get obsessive about a particular part or line that you want someone to recreate, then it deflates them. You've got to let them be themselves and
Right.
work with the people that you have in the studio and get the most out of them instead of it being about me
And
as a
you have a lot
composer.
of language too to make those conversations work with different instrumentalists. If you want to
Right.
hear something slightly different, you can
Yeah.
if they're very much in tune with the language of formal music
Yeah.
education, you can say, okay, well, maybe we can try something a little different here, or
Yeah.
the way you're playing your
Absolutely.
eighth notes can be a little different, and
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
without
Exactly.
deflating, without kind of diminishing their personality.
Yeah, and being able to assess that personality very quickly in the studio is kind of key. And so being in tune with being an empath, really, like
Right.
being able to watch someone's body language, see when they're having a moment, when do we need to take a break to kind of reassess this thing. And those are the things that I'm learning. Like I know how to arrange stuff. I know how to edit things. I know the technical side of making music. It's this interpersonal stuff that is fascinating and that I just want to get better and better at.
I think that's kind of what happens as you develop in a career. It's
Right.
funny because I talk to my brothers a lot. They have very different careers.
Right.
They're older. They're mostly in science, academics, science. One's a medical doctor, and as they get older, their jobs shift from being researchers directly
Yep.
to managing personalities and trying to get the
Yes.
best out of the researchers that they have from all over the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to hear. At first they're like, oh, I just want to get back in the lab and just do that.
Yeah.
But I also realize that, as that's also, it's a privilege to be in that
Yeah.
situation, but your job changes to human resource management.
Absolutely. I've often thought like maybe I should go get a master's degree in business or something so that I could take these management courses and really learn, the skill of being able to talk to people and get the most out of them,
I
do an
mean,
audit class.
but I think it's also, you learn that, and being
Yeah.
empathetic is probably the first thing. It's about listening. It's about, as you said, taking those cues, wanting the best from them,
Yeah.
letting them know that's your interest as well. You're not just
Yeah.
there to use them, or that
Absolutely.
this is a joint effort to move towards something great. And isn't it
Yeah.
magical when you see it
Oh my gosh, it's the
happen?
most amazing thing to be a part of, to see someone kind of explode beyond what they and you thought they were capable of doing into this kind of transcendent place. That is the magic of producing stuff. And I mean, I'm learning how to get to that point more frequently by letting go a little bit. The tighter you hold on to something, or the tighter you hold on to your own personal idea of the way things should go, the quicker you can deflate someone.
Right.
Because if they are not on the same page, if they don't understand what it is that you're trying to get, they just want to be themselves, then it can really go south quick.
Well,
And I've learned those lessons.
have you? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
It's
Sure.
I find there's just, I've been watching these coaching documentaries. I've been
Oh,
watching these,
cool.
and I watched this like football documentary on Netflix, and the coaches were so wild, and their styles were divergent. Let's just say they were quite
Yeah,
different, and certainly different from what I would expect. And I
right,
think in sports, coaching can look so many different ways, but
right.
it's not altogether different. It's, in fact, it's exactly the same as what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
It's about getting
yeah,
multiple personalities, getting people
yep,
to excel beyond their expectation, and as
yeah,
a team
yeah,
rising up. And it's a magical thing when it happens, is tapping
yeah,
into that potential, but how to
yeah,
do it. When to lean in, when to let go, when to
absolutely. And
push,
the
when
the struggle that I have sometimes is, like coaching, there are some people that really respond so well to being pushed, and you push them and push them and push them, and they reach a frustration point, and then something magic happens. But that coach might not be liked by them all the time. And the question is, as a producer, do I ever want to get to that place where the artist doesn't like me, but is creating now something that's magical and amazing? And I haven't quite reconciled not being liked, you know?
so interesting. I think about that with my kids all the time.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
about it all the time. It sounds crazy to say, but I think about it all the time with my kids. How important is it for my kids to like me? I want them to know that I love them
yes,
no
yeah,
matter what. and
Yeah.
my interest is in them doing great and being happy and healthy.
Yeah.
But
I'm
in order
yeah.
to do that, sometimes I might not be likable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And how far do you push that before you lose your job? You know?
Yeah, right.
And, I mean, I'm curious because I've not really worked with very many producers personally. But you have. I mean, have you had those experiences where producers have pushed you to the point where you're like, oh God, I don't know if I can work with this person.
Well, I mean, I'm used to, first of all, like my dad was super strict.
Right.
He was, he was, he was all about this. He
Yeah.
was all
So
about this.
you are a person that responds well to
I
being
probably
pushed.
am because
Yeah.
I saw it in how he was so focused on raising us, and he directed musicals, and I think it was very intense. It was
Right.
a
Right.
huge cast. He was a very intense guy, and he was very driven, but he pushed people, and he always believed that people's expectations of themselves are way lower than what their capacity is, and they'll
That's
only
true.
rise up to what you expect of them.
Yeah.
And so the first step is to expect way more than they think they can handle.
Yeah.
And so resistance is part of that. And so
Yeah.
that was part of, like, that sounds kind of nuts, but that was my upbringing. And I'm the
Yeah.
youngest. I had it the easiest.
Right.
My three
Right.
older
Right.
brothers, it was more intense. And
Right.
so I think that I can kind of, I don't mean to say I can handle it, but I grew up with it. So it's not
You have
totally
an
foreign.
understanding of it.
I have an understanding of that approach and also harsh. I would be surprised if it would get more harsh.
Right.
James Bunton, who produced my last record, who works with Donovan
Uh-huh.
Woods a lot, he's
Yep.
a demanding producer. He was a
Right.
very demanding producer, and I responded. I think that I got frustrated. There were times where I was like, "Oh, I wish this was easier," or "Why
Yeah.
can't he see the value in this?" But
Yep.
ultimately, I would go back, hit the song, and come back afterwards and be like, "That was painful, but it's a better song."
But it's better. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
song got better because he
Yeah.
told me it should.
Yeah.
And he didn't
Yeah.
necessarily tell me what to do. He just
Yeah.
told me that it could be better.
Right. Right. Right.
Which,
That's good. That's really good. I mean, there are not all artists that you work with have that. Like, I tend to be working with a lot of emerging songwriters. And so the people that I'm working with um, are vulnerable in a way that if you kill it, they could be gone forever.
yeah,
I recognize that when I'm working with them. And so part of it is kind of fostering their ability to defend their art.
yeah,
And when they don't defend it, that's where the hole is. And I try and fill it with love, basically. I mean,
yes,
that sounds super cheesy, but fill it with something that makes them want to continue to do it and get better.
yeah.
So it's a real balance. But I would really love to start producing people who have the experience that you have, that I can start to push people outside of their comfort zones. And I do that with the people that I'm producing, but I'm reserved in how hard I push,
Yeah, yeah. No,
I'd
I think
say.
that's really important. I think about
Yeah.
someone like Charles Austin, who we both know real well, who's produced a lot of big
Amazing.
records. He's so good
Yeah.
at that stage of development because he helps
Incredible.
people find their voice. It's all support. It's all
I don't
love
think
and
the
support.
Halifax music scene would be what it is without Charles Austin.
For sure.
Truly.
No way. No way.
Truly.
Because so many people go through that experience,
Yeah.
totally varied, right? Totally different
Yes.
artists, totally different bands. To me, to Walrus, you've made records with Charles,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Joel, Matt Mays,
Yeah.
Buck 65, tons of different people. But a lot of what it is that early support, that early love, as you said,
Yeah.
like filling that space, not with necessarily criticism, but understanding that, okay, we're going to find
Yeah.
your thing. I'm going to
Yes.
encourage you to explore. And
Yes.
you want to try that weird reverb? Let's do it. Let's have
Yeah.
fun.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's really so important at an early stage. And also, there is this understanding that there is no wrong way in creativity. That creativity is an exploration, it's not an end result. And so if you are constantly in this state of creating something, keeping that creative energy flame fostered and burning, if that is always there, then the end result is going to be better than when you started,
That's
you
and
know?
that's just it. It's like our own, but it comes back to our own lives
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
artists.
Yeah.
Right. So interesting when you talk to, as you said, emerging artists, and you're trying to foster the kind of core values of what
Yeah.
that you start to learn all these things about yourself.
Yourself. Yeah, totally.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, well, wait, how do I keep that creative fire going? Who are the artists that we really admire as
Yep.
they age? They're the
Yes.
people who maintain that creative spirit, the David Byrnes of the world, who just like are
Yeah.
like, you're still engaged with your
It's
art.
a curiosity that always needs to be there. That curiosity of trying something. And I think that all the people that I really love are willing to take risk
Yeah.
because they want to stretch themselves. And sometimes it's a flop, and sometimes it's incredible. David Byrne's a great example. Nick Lowe, who has had such a long career,
Yeah.
even Bob Dylan. Like all people who are risk takers and pushing themselves
And
outside of their comfort zone.
and it's not necessarily a function of how huge their career is or how
Right?
easy it's been or how hard it's been. It
Yeah.
ends up being a personal commitment to risk,
Well,
essentially.
and that I think is what, as artists, we need to define as success is this longevity, which is this constant fostering of creativity and curiosity. And if we can maintain that, we're going to be artists forever. And this idea of putting industry before creativity, it can so easily happen when you're in the middle of promoting a record. That part of the business needs to be done. But in order to maintain your artistic career for a very long time, you can't let that flame be extinguished.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly it. And if you're not careful, it will be extinguished by the very forces you are part of,
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
there's no inherent part of the model
Yeah.
that 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 is for fostering the creative fire and those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
It's about an industry. It's okay. It's an industry.
Yeah.
It's, as you
Yeah.
said, it's a part of it. You need to then put it out. You got a widget. You got to sell it. You
Of
know what I
course.
mean?
Of course.
But
My concern for especially a younger generation of musicians where, I mean, when I started making music, there was no Spotify, there was no YouTube videos, there was no social media, Instagram. My worry is that the image is coming before the music themselves, like that they're being led to believe that this is more important than the art. And I just don't see how they're going to be able to sustain themselves as artists when they're constantly worried about the number of likes they've got on
right.
something.
Yeah.
That would be so hard. I just couldn't imagine how painful that would feel to put that much weight on something like that all the time.
Well,
You
and
know?
it seems like everybody else puts a lot of weight on
Yes.
that as well, which is also,
Yes.
I suspect, quite discouraging. I mean, of course, it's very
Yeah.
misleading because
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily sustain, as you said, a long career. What sustains long careers is good work,
Yes, yes.
right?
And
Something
it's not
that
to
has an
say that
impact.
the image or the visual representation of your art is not important. I mean, you and I would both agree. We both work with one of the greatest, you know, graphic designer people around, Matt Dunlap, and that part of it is so exciting and fun to kind of, but it has to happen for me after the art is complete, or else it's like the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah,
It's
right.
backwards,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and it can be part of it. It's supposed to be
Yeah,
fun. It's supposed to be
yeah,
creative. If you're again, it's like the same. It can run by the same tenets. I think that that's what's interesting too. Is take it away from what the industry part,
yeah, yeah,
and make it part of if you're going to do that, then make it part of your art the same way a song is,
yes,
and
yeah,
own it. Make it
yeah,
your own. Make it
yeah.
interesting. Work
That's
with
right.
it. Have fun
That's
with
right.
it.
Yeah.
Don't get too bogged down by what other people are doing. It's the same
Yes.
way you try to find your unique voice and your creative pursuits. Make it, if you're going to do it, make it part
Yeah.
of your creative pursuits. The people I want to follow are people who are doing it in a way that is interesting, is original,
Yeah.
and I follow them. And there's lots of artists I like that don't do it very much, and that's okay
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it has to feel authentic. It has to feel like you're doing something because it's fun or you want to, you have something to say or like, I still am kind of baffled by the social media um, requirement as a musician now, that there is kind of this level of obligation that we've got to be on all the time. And that feels unnatural to me personally. But there's a certain amount of it that I do, but I don't really engage personally in social media that much at all. Um,
The
but I don't know
only
about you.
the I do a bit I do, and I had to turn a corner though. I had to turn a corner
Yeah.
with it, whereas I felt like it was going to offer me the freedom to be who I want to be.
Yeah.
I was going to present more of myself in order to create a career that was more like myself.
Right.
And so
Right.
by playing jazz songs or doing the things that are specifically in my interest that might not follow into my career in the
Right.
same way, I felt like I'm giving people a larger picture. So if they're part of my community at this point,
Right.
then they know me. It almost took some pressure
Right.
off,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
not put pressure
That's
on,
amazing.
because I thought they know that I like to swim. They know I got kids. They know, and being honest about, you know, depression and all
Yeah.
of these
Sure.
things were kind of like liberating to me, because all of a sudden I thought, okay, now when they're coming to the show or when they're buying, they're there for me. They're
Yeah.
not there
Right.
because I'm like someone else.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's what enabled me to move into that realm and be comfortable with it, was when I kind of gave up on it, and gave up on the idea and thought, you know what? Trying to build a community of people that are interested in what I do. They might as
Yeah.
well know exactly
Yeah.
what I am, which is, you know, an older, you know, now, like I'm not a pop star. I like reading and jazz.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
I've
Right.
always been this guy.
Right.
They didn't
Yeah.
maybe know it before, but so
Yeah.
it's kind of liberating.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, I find a little bit like with social media, I'm like a photographer on a holiday. Like I forget to take all the pictures. So when I'm in the middle of something, it doesn't occur to me even. And so that's the switch that's not gone on. When I'm in the middle of an authentic moment or I'm producing something, it seems like a younger generation is very in tune with, let's capture this and share it, capture and share, capture. I don't have that instinct ever. I forget. And so it's like I need someone to follow me around my whole life and just
Well,
kind
I
of
think some
capture
people
those things.
do, and I think some
Yeah.
people, and that's okay. I'm the same way. When I'm on the road, I don't do
Yeah.
it. I don't want to disturb the already, you know, it's a precious
Yeah.
thing that we have
Yeah.
going on, and I don't want to be up in everybody's face with the camera. And same thing
Yeah.
in studios. I'm trying to maintain that balance,
Yes.
but I think
Yeah.
there's an
Yeah.
understanding now that, yeah, if you can let people in, as
Right.
long as people trust, again, it's trust. And I mean, I don't. It's complicated.
Yeah.
Albums are complicated enough. When you get into
I
social
know. I know.
media,
I know. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that your point to kind of put out the things that build your community of supporters and not be thinking of it as a means to just fill a void, you know.
Yeah, or like virality.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Virility, virality.
Such a fine line.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like it's just one of those things, right? If you're trying to do that, then it
Yeah.
seems false. It's just the same
Yeah.
thing if you're trying to write a hit every
Yeah.
single time.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just like it doesn't really work that way. You got to just try to
No.
be you got to do what you do well,
Yeah.
you
Exactly.
know, but
Exactly. Yeah.
oh, Erin, I love chatting with you.
You too. We should just do this once a week
I
and
I
give
love
each
it.
other
It's
high fives.
totally. I know it's well. Thanks for testing this out and
Oh,
doing
my
this.
pleasure.
You know,
My pleasure.
over
Anytime.
the phone like this. It's really really sweet.
It's great. It's great.
Good luck with all the production. I think you've got the perfect mind for it.
Oh,
You
thanks.
really do.
Thanks.
You're going to be. You know, I'm glad that this is becoming a big part of your career, because you're absolutely perfectly suited for it. You're going to do,
Oh,
and you've
thanks.
already made great records. It's just going to continue for years. So,
Oh, thank you. I hope so. I hope so. I really love doing it.
and good luck on the next record whenever it comes up.
Awesome.
Keep me in the
Thanks
loop.
so much, David.
Right
I
on. Thank
will.
you.
Okay.
See
Talk to you
ya. Take
later.
care.
Bye.